Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Welcome to another show of Inspirate Business, the show that's here to inspire you, to empower you, and to enlighten you. And on this 16th show of the Inspirate Business, we have none other on our red hot couch, a good friend of mine, Yusuf Patel, somebody who I know for many years. Yusuf, at one stage, was my Amir at university. I think, Yusuf, you were about a year older than me at university, or a year ahead of me.
Yes.
And you were the Amir of the Muslim Students Association at the time. A very volatile time that we were living in. It was just pre the dawn of the democracy. So in that
Yes.
period when whilst we were there, the ANC was unbanned. Nelson Mandela had been released. It was in that crucial period, and we forged a good relationship. I know you are very passionate about social activism, around economic emancipation for the downtrodden, and I know you've been doing great work in that. So welcome to the Inspirate Business Show.
Hey, thank you very much, Yusuf. Assalamu alaikum, and greetings to all the viewers as well. You're taking us back now. That's memories of a time, and I think an era that, it's important to actually reflect on that time, since it was a volatile period, a very uncertain period. And, when you talk to people nowadays and when you look back at that time, I think everybody takes for granted that 1994 just happened. But I think during that time, things were so uncertain. It wasn't certain that we were going to actually have a democracy. And I think at university in those days, it was also quite an exciting time. Because there was a lot of, activism on campus. There was a lot of unity between different student groups and bodies. We worked with the Muslim Students Association, but we worked very closely with the leadership structures, student leadership structures across the board. And there was a lot of focus. Everyone was just focused on one thing, on dismantling apartheid, liberating ourselves, and working towards the democracy. So it was really, when you look back and when you see during that time, things were actually very volatile and uncertain. But fortunately, I think we had, excellent leadership that I think steered the country at the time through what we went through.
So they say the more things change, the more they remain the same.
Yes.
So you're talking about words that we could, and this was what, now more than that, 32 years ago, which kind of gives our age away. You can see it on our graveyards. But the point is that you use this word uncertainty, volatility. And 32 years later, we can say that about our times. Uncertainty, volatility. They talk about a global recession that's going to be hitting us. We are just coming out of and wiping our eyes out of this COVID nightmare, if I may call it that. And, I know you're very active and very passionate about this socio-economic development. And also very passionate about that something has to give, that this very system that we operate in is not, as much as it has brought a lot of progress and technological advancement, it is flawed in many ways. There's breakdown in society. There's this Gini coefficient. I mean, so few earn so much, and then the large masses of people just get left out. So something has to give.
No, absolutely. I think, that's the unfortunate thing, is that we went through that period of having, to liberate ourselves as South Africans. We had astute leadership. I think in the leadership, in the form of that generation of leaders, Nelson Mandela and all the Ravonia trialists and all our leadership that spent time and sacrificed, a lot of time, and a lot of ordinary people on the ground were involved and part of the process of freeing ourselves. But I think we had a leadership that actually gave us this hope and set for us this template. Even at that time, when many of us as young activists were also concerned about maybe we were kind of giving in too much, because when we went into transition, we were now starting to work with the enemy. We were working with the National Party. You formed a government of national unity. There were previous politicians in what was the former House of Delegates, which was really not it wasn't really a well-supported structure. It was created by the apartheid regime, as a facade of saying that as Indian community or as colored communities, you had some kind of representation. But and there were leaders in those sort of organizations that, in that transition period in 1994, a lot of them started joining, and even joining the ANC and joining the new government. So it was a hard pill to swallow, But I think there was a bigger picture that I think the leaders at that time put for us as a country, and it was necessary. And I think, what had actually happened through that period saved us as a country, built for us the kind of hope. Obviously, everything wasn't going to be sorted out overnight, because we had a whole legacy of colonialism and apartheid. We had serious levels of inequality, poverty in the country, underdevelopment. And it wasn't going to change overnight. But I think we had put in place a process by which we could start making progressive change to the lives of South Africans. So when you look back now, and when you actually look at the time, we actually created so much of hope, not only for South Africans, but the caliber of leadership we had were actually global icons, because even at a global level, they were actually setting a new moral standard for leadership, at a global stage. That's why our leadership in this country was so well respected. And the unfortunate thing is that both in South Africa, we actually veered off that path, and we went through all our challenges, as we know. But I think even on the global stage, the challenges and the kind of leadership and problems and challenges have just escalated. It almost seems like a complete turnaround, where we were living through that era where we're saying it was an era that was bringing hope, that we could now start dealing, we could create social democracies, we could, improve human rights, social economic justice, etc., was firmly on the agenda, and we were on that pathway, even in South Africa. I mean, we were making gradual progress, even in terms of service delivery, governance, etc., investment. The economy of the country was stabilized. We started growing the economy in South Africa. We had some of our best growth, etc. And all of that, unfortunately got reversed. But I think it's gone in tandem with just at a global level, things we haven't been able to manage. This obscene concentration of wealth in a kind of, amongst an elite. It's happening at a global level within countries. And I think we've just lost the plot. So you're actually seeing more authoritarianism now developing in the rest of the world.
We just heard now that in Israel, it's gone now to the far right.
Yes.
With Netanyahu coming back. Yeah.
Absolutely. And I think you're seeing this happening all over. We're moving towards the far right. People are not, whereas we were trying to build an inclusive society, at national and at the global level, that whole agenda is actually is under serious threat. There's some hope now. We have, in Brazil, Lula da Silva has come back. So there's some hope, but I think by and large we're living in a world that needs to be reconscientized now around this transformative vision and approach about how we need to live as human beings, not just thinking selfishly about ourselves, our own communities in a narrow way, but to think about the broad upliftment of people. And that's what I think, that's what Nelson Mandela and I think the leadership that we had at that time, in that period, they set the tempo for that kind of a society and a system,
Yeah, so we've already come to the end of this first segment, and we are being truly enlightened by Yusuf Patel talking about these last 28 years of democracy, and even prior to that with the activism that he was involved with. And, I like to talk about these, or like when you were talking, I was saying there was this almost like two South Africas and two new South Africas. There was this 94 to 2007, and there was that period, and there was hope, and there was some pragmatism of turning that hope into reality. And then there was this 2007 to 2020, which was this all our doing of the breakdown. And then, of course, this whole global issue with the pandemic and so on, that we were just not able to weather that storm the way we were supposed to have. So after the break, let's explore maybe some of the things we can do differently. I think what we do on the show is always about hope. And how can we bring back that hope in a very pragmatic way, if we can, after the break. Welcome back to Inspirate Business, where we are being enlightened by Yusuf Patel, somebody who I know for a long time, who is very passionate about this country that we live in, very conscientized about the world we operate in. And something very important that Yusuf mentioned is that we are moving, the world is moving into a more fractured world. Whereas there was this euphoria at one stage, and actually very much led by the South African model, where you spoke of the Nelson Mandela philosophy, this rainbow nation, this of bringing fractured communities together. You said you had to work with those that were involved in the House of Delegates and House of Representatives, and then the enemies working together. But that was this inclusiveness, which then permeated on the global stage. And we've seen that really breaking down. With you have this extreme left, and then you have the extreme right, and people are so polarized. And now it can be very dismal. So people also become more insular. People start becoming more selfish. People start thinking of survival. What's the point? People become mistrusting of each other. Yes. So I don't know, is it a move to perpetuate this even further fracturing, or is there hope, or do we have to do even more now for bringing back that rainbow concept, that actual prophetic principle that was taught to us 1400 years ago? If you take the Prophet's last sermon, it was all about inclusivity. So as Muslims, also importantly, should we not be doing more to be able to create this all-inclusive society?
Yes, I think absolutely. We've got two choices. We can either kind of all just fold up our arms, become part of the run of the mill of what's happening, or we all have to, I think, self-reflect. it's not a blame game. I think everybody at an individual level, at a family level, at a community level, has to do some kind of self-reflection and really look deeply at where are we as individuals, as a society. And I think we need that compass again to reset. I mean, you speak about the prophetic model, and I think that model was about, can you imagine what to transform a society at that time, and to be able to put in place what today is an entire Islamic civilization, so you can imagine the transformation that went, and the work and the effort and the sacrifice that went into that, and I think there's always hope that we can change things. So I think we need to look at ourselves, do a reflection, reset, and we all need to conscientize ourselves and people around us, that we've been involved in this process of saying, how do we build a movement? Movement. We're part of this movement for United South Africa, which is
that's Musa.
That's Musa, which is also about saying, how do we talk about an awareness for socioeconomic justice, that we all become more aware of the inequalities in our society. We become more aware of how power is being manipulated in societies, right? How we may be part of these things, adding to it, or we can be solutions for some of these problems and challenges. So this transformative consciousness is about starting to live with this greater awareness about our society, our place in society, the challenges in society, but how we can actually take society from the current quagmire, and I think the decay that is happening. And society is going through a moral, ethical decay. And how can we move out of this, towards a more balanced society where we have dignity for everyone, where we can create prosperity for everyone. We can overcome this wealth gap, and it can be done, but it's going to take this conscientization, this awareness, and it's going to take practical programs and efforts to actually start changing.
Now, I want to challenge you on that, and now, because many people watching would say, you know what we're doing here is we're waxing lyrical, right? We provide them these convoluted principles, which we've heard. I mean, the United Nations spends billions every year for the last, I don't know how many years, talking about these universal goals, poverty alleviation, and all you see is year in and year out, it gets worse.
Yes.
Now, is it maybe that is when I say that also, I'm also challenging myself, because maybe that's a narrative that I've also been told, that is it necessarily getting worse? Or is it that society is getting better, with all technological advancement, more people are getting into the mainstream through technology, etc., with what social media is doing, with growth that's taking place. Is it as bad as what the story we have been told?
So I think the issue is the world has got more complex, because we've got now over 7 billion people. We're not a small...
That in itself is a challenge.
I mean, just South Africa itself, we're talking of the period when we were on campus. South Africa was probably not even 30 million people. Today, we are 60 million.
It's true, and growing each year.
So as we're sitting here, in just our lifetime,
that's a doubling.
We've doubled our population, right? So that's going to come with complexity. That's going to come with challenges. That's going to come with as you have more people, you need to provide infrastructure, services. Everybody has to have water, energy. That's why we're having an energy, electricity crisis, right? We don't have enough. We're not producing enough energy and electricity. But what this tells us is that we have to become more sophisticated as societies and start planning better and do long-term planning, and be able to govern better. So we we need functional, capable, ethical states that function better. That's the only way we're going to deal with issues of poverty and inequality. Now, we've got growing populations, but the world's economies have also grown. And as you get economic growth, inequality is inevitable, right? So you have to have mitigation measures that have to be very deliberate to ensure that you're uplifting people and including people. Because, say, for example, if the economy grows and you have more capital and more resources than I do, when there's growth opportunities, who's going to you're going to access those opportunities, not me, right? So how do we ensure that yes, we want to grow, we need economic growth, we need growth that is good for society and good for the environment, because climate change is the other big issue, right? We need to start. It's no use we celebrate that we're growing our economy, but we're growing it in a way where we're consuming and producing all the wrong things. That's harming people, that's harming the environment, right? So we have to re-look at how we grow the economy. We need to grow the economy in a more smarter way, in more sustainable and green ways, right? But inevitably, when you grow the economy, if people that do not have access to resources or are at the bottom rung of society, if there are no deliberate policies to take them along, the inequality gap is just going to grow higher and higher. Now, that is why we need responsible policymakers, we need a responsive government, and you need capable ethical states that can make sure they can take advantage of economic growth, they can plan better, but they can make sure that we do things in an inclusive way. So we have to, this vigilance and that we talk about, and this hope that we talk about, is about how citizens need to hold governments accountable and how we need to shape the kind of state that we live in. Because we are the citizens, as citizens, we make up that state. So we should stop putting our arms aside and say, these politicians and blaming everyone. We are the ones that must take up the struggle. It's a continuous struggle.
This is now the economic struggle.
And the struggle is the economic struggle. It's about being vigilant. It's about holding people accountable. It's about taking responsibility. So, but it's also about what can we do more for ourselves as individuals, as families, as communities. How can we move towards community-driven development models and look at more self-reliance that we can build. And there's a lot of things that people do. I mean, whether it's about building food security within communities, looking at innovative ways in which we can use technology and empower people. There's a whole range of different things that we can do. So we need to get out of yes, we can complain, and we have the right to complain about everything that's going wrong. And there's a lot of things that's going wrong. But the complaining can be turned into a positive energy. Let's not turn it into something negative, because then things will only get worse. But we have to make a call and say, we want to be part of the solution, and whatever it is, whether we're going to now make sure we get the government and the people and the leadership that we deserve, and we're going to work towards that and be part of that, right? Stop thinking of ourselves as if we are South African citizens. We are all part of this country. We can make things happen. And let's see what we can do in our communities. We all come from different communities, whether it's religious communities, whether it's a geographic area where we're living in, etc. Let's see how we can start mobilizing people to, for this self-upliftment.
Yes. So Yusuf has just provided us with what I believe is the ethos and principles that we try to espouse through the Inspirate Business Show, which is that let's not be foolhardy in a sense that we bury ourselves under the ground and pretend that these problems don't exist, because that's one extreme. The other extreme is that we identify the problems and then all we do is just become complainers, which is the other extreme. What Yusuf is providing is to say that, yes, that we have huge problems in this country, globally, but there is hope. And it means you can't give up that power to somebody else, whether it may be government, whether it may be whoever. You need to keep your leaders accountable. You have to bring out that leadership within you to make that positive change and turn that complaining into positivity that Yusuf talks about. So after the break, what I want to do is, Yusuf, go down into a very, and I know you've been involved in a lot of government projects and community projects around what would this model look like? At least let's tap into the blueprint of what this positive conscientizing that you talk about, socioeconomic conscientizing that you talk about looks like after the break. Welcome back to Inspirate Business, the show that's here to inspire you, to empower you, and to enlighten you. And on our red hot couch, we have Yusuf Patel, who is very passionate about this country, has provided us with a lot of insight into some of the challenges we are facing as a country, operating in this global context. And what Yusuf shared with us is, and I challenged him that a lot of people there's a lot of despair, and rightfully so. People wanting to leave South Africa because they feel that this is a failed state, that hope that we all were excited about in '94 has waned. There's just been too much of everything that's been broken now. You look at the energy crisis, and now a water crisis, and it just goes on and on and on. Every day you just listen, and there's so much of corruption. You're talking of what is supposed to be ethical leadership. You're talking of policies that needs to be there for growth. A lot of people say we have some of the best policies. I mean, we've had so many different versions of growth policies, from GEAR to RDP. There's so many different, the latest is the National Development Plan. I think we're some of the smartest thinkers in this country. But why does it not trickle into, like when somebody is out there listening, they out there and they come out of the house and the streets are dirty, there's potholes, there's no service delivery. That is the reality we're facing. So on that level, and taking this thinking of yours and this experience of yours, having worked on socioeconomic projects and this inclusiveness, how do you turn around something that's as broken as what it is?
Yeah, look, it's complex. It's not there's no silver bullet solutions in that, right? But we, and we are all, it's completely justifiable for us to be completely angry about what is going on in the country. We should not be accepting this kind of, not even mediocre kind of service delivery and governance. In some cases, it's just complete negligence of duty, right? And there isn't a sense of responsibility when you're in a position, whether you are an official in government or a municipality, or you're a councillor or a politician. There isn't that sense of duty, that sense of duty for the people in the country. And that's what you need, right? So as citizens, we should be angry. There's no, anybody that says they're not angry at what's happening, they need to get themselves checked out. We shouldn't be accepting this. We deserve much more. And we spoke of that history of where we came from and what we fought for in this country to come to where we are. We should be double angry at what is going on now, right? So that is completely justifiable. But we have to now channel this anger and change things and not leave it. Because if we're going to disengage, then you're leaving room for people that want to make a mess of things to continue making a mess, right? So we have to, how do we crowd the negative forces out of the system? And that can only happen by us channeling this anger, making sure that we keeping government accountable. But we need to become more, we need to also take on this challenge, in a more kind of educated way, let me say. So, for example, we know government, and yes, so we hear often government policies are good, implementation is a problem. Yes, implementation is a problem. We have many good policies, but I think we also don't have many good policies that we need to change things, right? And we're hiding behind this fact that and sometimes we had nice policies, but those policies are all, they're all gone now. We need to relook at things, I think, sometimes. So we need to become more, I think, thorough in the way we're actually engaging with what government policy is, with the implementation programs, with the budgets of different departments or cities or municipalities. We need to start interrogating more in terms of what are they actually doing? What are they actually doing with these billions and billions of rands? I mean, we sitting with, we heard the medium-term budget policy statement. We've got like 1.8 trillion rands we collect in revenue from the taxpayers. We, all of us are the taxpayers. Everybody's paying tax, whether you're buying food or whatever you're doing, you're paying VAT, you're working for someone, you're paying tax. All of that money is our money that equates to 1.8 trillion rands, which is a lot of money. I mean, our economy is, our economy is sitting at about over 6 trillion rands. So we're not a small country, and we should stop treating ourselves as if we're some backwater country.
Yes,
we are a sophisticated middle-income economy, and we as citizens must start raising the bar in the way we start engaging on all of these issues, so that we get more thorough in the way we understand how every cent is being spent, in the country. And what it also means is that we must also start looking at the bigger picture, whether it's in our communities or the broader society. So what happens sometimes, we all tending to focus on, okay, what's the budget going for our little area here or little project here? What we need to start interrogating is, are our officials, for example, if you're saying in the case of our cities and our municipalities, are they actually doing proper, robust planning for what needs to be delivered, right? So sometimes we say we're not having delivery, and we think we've actually done the planning for it. We haven't done the planning for it, right? And you're planning at different levels, at a strategic long-term level, then you're planning at a level of a project, and you've got to plan that project out. And then you've got to deliver that project. And whether it's around the procurement, the services, it has to be planned out properly. And it's got to be managed properly, right? So I think we need to get more thorough on that. And that has to be part of the model. And then the other part of it has to be about how communities can actually start organizing themselves, right? In the end of the day, even when we spoke of the period, the 80s and 90s, it was activism. It was on the ground. It was door-to-door work, street committees, right?
Yes.
Communities were getting into street committees and were organizing themselves and were coming up with programs, right? So we need to re-energize that in our communities.
And we've seen that a little bit when sadly it happened in a crisis, when you had that KZN riots, when you had that looting that was taking place, when you had the floods in KZN. You seen that community galvanizing.
Absolutely.
Sadly, it was done in a reactive way. What I'm hearing you saying is that let's do these things in a more proactive way, in a planning way, and hold government accountable as a stakeholder, but not just give up our power to government to solve the problems, because that's not going to happen.
Yes.
We've seen that. That has not happened in the last 28 years.
Yeah, don't take simple answers for granted from government. Interrogate and let us get more educated about what is going on in the delivery programs, in the budgets, how they spend, who's doing things, etc. But you're right. I think in crisis situations, we're actually very good in this country. We organize ourselves. I mean, disaster relief programs, food relief programs, and as civil society and community-based structures, organizations, we can do it.
I mean, if you think about it, think of Gift of the Givers, a South African
Absolutely.
organization that's now become an internationally renowned disaster management solution-oriented company or organization. I guess it comes from the South African mentality of being great when the chips are down. You know what I mean? When we're under pressure.
Yeah.
But we need to translate this. I think that's a very powerful thing.
And there's so many good people working in all of these organizations.
Yes.
A lot of them work on a voluntary basis. They have full-time jobs, or they, so we can do this. But I think you're right, as you're saying. Why don't we do this in a proactive way and rather bring our communities together and say, let us see how we're going to visualize the change that we want in our communities. Let's start doing little projects. Let's make sure that we're creating systems, whether it's cleanup campaigns, whether it's running campaigns with youth development programs. Let's kind of create these sort of things. We can use sports. Sports is a great way of bringing communities
and
together.
A national asset for South Africa.
Absolutely. Yeah. And let's get our municipalities to start investing in sports fields and all of that. We've reached the situation where we all just fold our arms. We played on facilities. At that time, we thought were terrible facilities.
Yes.
And you go today and you're living in a democracy. We fought for change, and the facilities are even worse than what we had in that time. True. It's unacceptable, right? So we should be making sure that there must be budgets and money, and the money must be found, and it must be put into those facilities. And the communities can work even with cities to make sure that these things are run properly. And the excuse that there isn't money and we can't do this and we can't do that, I think we must go and we must interrogate things. I mean, there's a lot of...
Now, you said something very powerful. I mean, I think we are our own worst enemy. Because, you said we are a strong middle income country, right? Still today, the leaders on this continent, and a continent that has got so much of potential. I mean, I think sometimes, like speaking to international visitors here, they see more excitement and more opportunity in South Africa than what we do.
Absolutely.
Right? They come here, and I know some guys over the year from the UK now, and they're like wanting to invest, and there's a lot of, obviously they also see other challenges, but point that I'm trying to make is that change the narrative, right? And what you're saying is roll up your sleeves, get more active, hold people accountable, hold your leaders accountable in your communities, and get involved in structures where we can mobilize like we did in the 80s. I mean, that's how we toppled an evil regime. Right, and now we have obviously a different set of challenges, but the principles are the same.
Absolutely, I think I think we just have to start also reaching out to each other
as South Africans.
As South Africans,
in this all-inclusiveness,
as different faith-based communities.
Yes,
on the ground as faith-based communities, let's start working and reaching out to each other. We don't necessarily need to waste our time with, I think normally, we try and sort all the leadership issues out, even in the churches and the mosques, and, those are we've got the leadership at that level, and let them deal with the issues but as ordinary people in faith-based communities, we are all inspired by our religious background, by our religious scriptures and teachings, and a lot of that inspired us even in terms of the anti-apartheid struggle, right?
Yes, of course.
So let's reignite all of that. I mean, there was this the faith-based communities played a very important role.
South African Council of Churches.
Absolutely. Yes. You had the Muslim youth movement structures. You had the Call of Islam. In the Muslim communities, you had these structures that were actually, saying what is the essence of our faith, and a lot of it is around socioeconomic justice.
Yes.
Socioeconomic justice it's a rallying point for everybody, whether you come from whatever different background, and we can start uniting, around that and say, how do we start rebuilding and making sure we're living in a society where there is justice. And what we mean by this justice is that where everybody is actually treated equally before the law. Doesn't matter whether you from a big corporate or you're a politician or you're something. Everybody is equal. We're building a society where we want to benefit. We want to spread the benefits across society, not just the benefits go to a group of connected people or to a group of elites. We want the benefits to be spread across society.
Okay, so we've come to the end of this segment. Wow, this we could carry on for many other segments because there's so much to speak about. What I want to do after the break in that last segment is talk a little bit about now how I, as an individual, there's a call to action here, how I can get involved, and if I want to just volunteer and just be part of this passionate movement that you're creating, how I can get involved with it. Immediately after the break. Welcome back to Inspirate Business, where we are to inspire you, to empower you, and to enlighten you. And we've already come to this last segment, and we've had some wonderful insights being shared by Yusuf Patel, somebody who is very involved on the ground, involved in policy level, involved in projects that are around socio-economic justice. Yusuf speaks about, and this principle that Nelson Mandela and the like has brought to us as all-inclusive society, where you're galvanizing various factions of society together toward developing a country that understands and respects differences, but works toward the betterment of the nation. Now, I know you are involved in a movement, if I may call it that, for lack of a better word. I know there's the word movement in it. It's called, you mentioned a little bit about it, the Movement for a United South Africa.
Yes.
What exactly is this movement about? Another political party or another organization?
No, it's not a political party, but it's really it's a movement to galvanize people around this transformative consciousness for socioeconomic justice and building this awareness about the challenges in our society and building this activism to say that we can start addressing these things. And we need to address it, and we need to have the hope to make things better and to change. And we've got, we've got a lot of things that, like I say, inspire us, whether we look at it from faith-based communities, we look at our own history as we were talking about, where we did certain things in this country. We were
community activism.
Yes, we've got community activism. We can make change happen. Even from a government point of view, we can deliver. This government was able, the democratic government had the capacity and was actually delivering. Remember, we had a society after apartheid, only 20-30% of people had access to a lot of the basic services, whether it was electricity, water, sanitation. Today that is all, it's over 90% access to many of these services, etc. And as we've developed more, like I say, things have actually got more complicated with more population growth and urban growth, etc. So we have to become better at how we manage and how we plan. But the point is, we can do these things. And we've got a constitution. All constitutions are not perfect, but I think we've got a great constitution. And Musa was built on this notion to say, look, we sort of veering off the path of this constitution. I think we need to get back to that constitution, re-galvanize around that constitution, and reunite our people around the vision of in what's in that constitution. And for us, it's not about this. You mentioned the rainbow nation. For us, the difference is, it's not just about us being nice and tolerant to each other and that, right? We're saying we have to build a united country that is focused on socioeconomic justice, that is clear about ensuring that we deal with the power structures in society.
But even have the tough conversations.
So we deal with the power structures in society because we want to be united, not just what do we want to be united around? We want to be united around socioeconomic development and upliftment of our people, right? And bringing dignity to everybody in this country. That's what we want to be united around. So that is the program that Musa is pursuing.
Otherwise, we'll just be perpetuating the same old, and then you're going to actually have a total crisis.
I think part of the Rainbow Nation thing has got us in a bit of a paralysis because, when we see, okay, if everybody is nice to each other, okay, then let us all just carry on doing whatever we want to do. But we then lost a bit of focus, and it's about saying, listen, we want to be a rainbow nation that understands our constitution, that reignites that vision in our constitution, bring it in practically into our communities, into our lives, but make sure that we actually recalibrate and level the playing fields in our society and start. And recalibrating doesn't mean that we're not saying one must lose. It's not a zero-sum game. It's about how we can lift everybody up. And
it's win-win.
It becomes a win-win, but it also is to say that those that do have resources, everybody, and at every level, even ourselves, whoever have resources, whatever resources you have, how can we use our own resources to help build the country? How can we also look at ensuring that public policy can be re-engaged in a way that we can also start becoming a bit more differentiated in the way we deal with public policy, so that we make sure we're building our country. So for example, I think part of our challenges with our economic policy is that, yes, we need to have proper macroeconomic management and control. And I think by and large, we do quite well with it. But I think our policies are not transformative enough, right? And we need to start looking at, for example, and what we say even as Musa, let's start looking at differentiated policies with regard to interest rates, for example, in the country. So if we can mobilize a house, because housing is one of the biggest needs we have in the country, and we can build, in terms of housing, we can start building more sustainable, functional communities, right? So let's focus on making sure that we dignify people by bringing good quality housing to people, but recalibrate the policy, because I think the current housing policy has created this whole dependency syndrome with sort of this free housing and all of that. I think we can. There's a whole spectrum of people that need housing. It's from the poorest of the poor through. There's a whole low income. There's a middle gap market. So there's a big need for us to look at that whole continuum, and reorganize, the housing policy and the systems. And we potentially can even look at concession zero interest rates for housing, so people can actually be motivated to go and, with their own income, work, generate income, but then be able to afford housing that they can pay for themselves through processes like maybe a differentiated system of with housing units at a certain level. Those housing units, we actually give them out at a zero interest rate, and they can be managed through the banking system through an admin fee rather than charging.
And I mean, that in itself takes people out of poverty,
absolutely,
into kind of mainstream economy. It creates growth.
Yes.
It spurs the whole economy going. It has ripple effects on other businesses that supply to these projects. Those people have now dignity. They are empowering themselves, and as a nation, you build community by community. You build, you build up. So what I'm hearing is also this thing of multiple stakeholders, not dominated by one, which is we leave this power to government to solve everything, but and innovative instruments which the private sector will come to the party when these things happen. And in doing so, you then work through this all-inclusiveness to then spearhead this economy.
Yes, I think 100%. I mean, I think, when there's problems, we need to all become innovative, entrepreneurial, transformative. If we don't approach problems with that mindset, then it's going to be same old,
It has to be this way. When you say transformative, it's actually this whole new approach, a new paradigm.
Yes. I mean, when we're delivering the medium-term budget policy statement, what is the transformative content of that? That's going to say, you know what, tomorrow we're talking of serious change and impact.
A quantum jump.
On people's lives through this budget policy statement. And I don't think we're there yet. I think we're doing the same old things. The Reserve Bank does a good job, I think, of monetary policy managing, and we need that, right? We don't want to, I'm not on this notion of this so-called radicalism that you must change and destroy everything. And no, where we're doing
let's not play to the Bell Pottinger model now.
The good elements of what we're doing we must be astute in what we do, right? And we must be responsible in what we do. But I don't think we've been innovative and transformative enough, even in our public policy, in the way we're looking at, as the Reserve Bank, let's challenge the Reserve Bank on this model that we're talking about. Let's say, let's come together and let's look at whether this thing can be, we can make it workable. Because like you say, the multiplier effect of that, when you give a house, you build a home, you bring dignity to family, you rebuild family structures. Because our family structures, our community are being destroyed because we're not living in functional neighborhoods. So our budget, we're very proud of our budget, that the largest share of our budget goes into what? Education, right? Over 400 billion a year. It's a lot of money, and we're not getting all the outcomes that we want, right? But part of why we're not getting the education outcomes is because we're not looking at what's happening in the communities and the families that access those schools in those communities. So in many cases, and we've done some work also in some of the cities and metros, so what you're actually finding is, before you can even have a functional school, you need a functional community and family that can be a support framework for a child, to put a child into a school environment, and we need to relook at those things as well.
Look, there's clearly what has come out of this last hour is that we have a lot of challenges. South Africa is a complex country. I actually heard that from an uncle of mine that's visiting here from Canada, and he said there's one thing he's heard from various conversations is that we are a very complex society.
Absolutely.
Operating in a somewhat complex world today. I think this homogeneous societies that was there in our time is actually moved. There's no left and there's no right. There's versions of left that are right and versions of right that are left. And what it requires, I think, is that it starts with the individual. I think is what you're saying. And this is what my understanding of this movement.
We must just make sure there mustn't be a situation where there's nothing left.
Yeah, that's our biggest challenge. That's our biggest challenge. And I think if we don't do things in this transformative way that you speak about, we probably will end up like that. And that's why you say you can't just fold your arms, bury your head under the ground or run away. Where are you going to run to? Yeah, obviously we live in a global world where there's mobility and you have an opportunity somewhere, yeah, of course. But when you're here in South Africa, and if this is what you've chosen, then let's roll up our sleeves and let's work together. But as you said, be angry. Be angry at what you see that's wrong. When you get up in the morning and you see something that's wrong, be angry. When you see that pothole, be angry. When you see money being wasted, be angry. And that, when we were angry, is when we transformed this country politically in the 80s and before. So let's be angry now, and let's transform this country now with a new way of operating. That's what you talk about, ethical leadership. That you talk about even our policies that needs to be more relevant to this environment that we're operating in today. And let's be innovative is another thing that you mentioned, because it needs new thinkers. And guess what? I think as South Africans, if there's one thing we are, I think we're some of the most creative and innovative people. I think sometimes it's channeled in the wrong way. But if we channel it in a positive way, of course, we can build a wonderful country. So if one wants to get hold of you, Yusuf, we'll have your details at the bottom. But if one wants to get involved with and understand more about the movement for United South Africa, what's the handle?
It's musa.org.za.
musa.org.za. We'll have it at the bottom as well.
Sure.
And I guess a lot of the information is on there and people want to get involved and just reach out to you as well, and just maybe giving some sort of guidance as well and how you can actually be more an active citizen, which I think that is the call and the clear message that has come out of this. On that score, from the Inspirate team, we thank you for spending the last hour with us. Hope it is as enlightening to you as it has been for me. On that note, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.